So HBO Max came out a few days ago and it's pretty great. HBO Max is Warner Bros.' response to Disney+. It consists of mostly HBO, DC, Cartoon Network, and various other Warner Bros. Properties to make up its library. HBO has always been about quality over quantity, and that principle lives on in HBO Max. The price is a little steeper than most other streaming services, with it being $14.99 a month, but it makes up for that in the quality of the content that you're getting. Another reason for this steep price is that it's for a more niche audience. I think HBO Max is more for your film enthusiasts than just your casual viewer. You can see this in its library, where it mostly consists of movies that the average audience wouldn't want to see. I mean, there's a good bit of blockbusters and some stuff for kids, but it's mainly classic films and adult-oriented TV shows. There's several shows for the more casual audience like Friends, Fresh Prince, The Big Bang Theory, Doctor Who, and The O.C.
What you say, what you say, what you say.
But most of the shows are HBO Originals, which target more hardcore viewers. So this definitely wouldn't be for your Disney Plus loving grandma who just wants a few shows to have on in the background while she's knitting. There are definitely a lot more films on here than TV shows, which is why I believe it's more targeted towards film enthusiasts rather than TV enthusiasts, but you could still have your fair share of HBO Originals that are pretty fantastic. The layout of HBO Max is pretty great, with most of its selections being represented by large posters. For some reason on desktop you can't scroll through the rows, you have to press an arrow button, which is a little annoying, but it's nothing too bad. The categories are basically the same as your average streaming service, with categories like based on books, watch with the family, romantic comedies, etc. One thing I do like is that some of the shows and movies are separated into categories based on either the franchise that they are part of or the company that owns them. And these categories are represented by the logos of their franchises or companies. For example, the Looney Tunes collection. Many of the original Looney Tunes cartoons are here, which is fantastic, and they're adding more as time goes on. Also, the criminally underrated Looney Tunes show is here. If you haven't checked the show out, I really encourage you to watch it and go in with an open mind. It's pretty different from your average Looney Tunes, which turned a lot of people off to it, but I personally love it.
Hey, Pinky, I'm sorry. Scooch to your left a little bit. Little more. 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 How's this? Perfecto.
There's also Looney Tunes Cartoons, which is an HBO Max original, and we'll touch on that later. It's cool seeing Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. I like that they're getting the more niche Looney Tunes content on here, and I'm hoping that shows that they're going to add more in the future, like Baby Looney Tunes, Wabbit, Tiny Toons Adventures, Duck Dodgers, and even Lunatics Unleashed, maybe? Luckily, Looney Tunes back in action, as well as some of the missing classic cartoons are coming next month, so hopefully they'll fill out the library as time goes on. There's also a lot of Hanna-Barbera content, but for some reason it's not its own category, and it's also not part of Cartoon Network. There's a ton of Scooby-Doo content, but it's missing some of my favorites like What's New Scooby-Doo, Mystery Incorporated, and a pup named Scooby-Doo. Also, an entire season of Scooby-Doo Where Are You is missing. This happens in several shows where it's just randomly missing a season. The shows that are serialized aren't missing seasons, but some of the shows like Scooby-Doo Where Are You, where the stories are contained within each episode, are missing entire seasons. It's very strange to just not have the entire collection, but I'm assuming they'll add it at some point. Every episode of The Flintstones is included along with both live-action movies. Also, the Jetsons and the Jetsons movie are present. Yogi Bear is here, and also Johnny Quest if that's your thing. Tom and Jerry also have a butt ton of cartoons on here. I know it's not Hanna-Barbera, but I have nowhere else to put it. I'm hoping some of the shows like Wacky Racers and Huckleberry Hound get added soon, along with some of the movies and specials. It's very base level Hanna-Barbera content, and hopefully more will come in the future. I'm really crossing my fingers that Boomerang will eventually merge with HBO Max and just put all of its content on there, because I don't think anyone pays for Boomerang. Maybe one day we'll get to see shows like Hong Kong Phooey, Grape Ape, and Yo Flippin' Yogi. If the classics aren't your thing, there's also a lot of Cartoon Network content on here. Most of the big name stuff is here along with several of the movies and some of their more modern content. It also seems like a lot of Cartoon Network original content will be made for Max, like the new Adventure Time series that's coming soon. Like I said, I'm hoping Boomerang merges with HBO Max so we can get some of the more obscure Cartoon Network shows like Codename Kids Next Door and My Gym Partner's a Monkey. And am I the only one that doesn't like the posters for these shows? I know it has nothing to do with the service, but it's always just the main characters on a solid color background. Also, the adult side of Cartoon Network gets some representation on here, with Adult Swim having its own collection. There's not a ton of shows on here, but the ones that are here are the big name stuff, like Rick and Morty, Robot Chicken, Samurai Jack, and Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Having Space Ghost Coast to Coast on here is cool, and it gives me hope that one day more Adult Swim classics like Harvey Birdman will make their way onto the service. I'm not super hurt by the lackluster Adult Swim library because with cable you get access to all the Adult Swim shows on their website, but I can understand it upsetting an Adult Swim fan who doesn't have cable. Oh my gosh! I just shined my flashlight in my eyes. That hurt. There's also Crunchyroll. I know nothing about anime. I've only heard of like one of these shows. I don't watch anime, so I don't really know, but if you think it's good, good for you. There's a nice handful here. Some of the anime I do know about, though, is Studio Ghibli. Almost their entire library is on here, and it's pretty fantastic. I'm excited to get to view all these classic films. The only ones I've ever seen were Totoro and Spirited Away, and I'm glad that I finally have a place to see every one of them. Most of the world already has all the movies on Netflix, but I'm excited to finally get to view them. I have no complaints here. Sesame Workshop. Yeah, this isn't really targeted towards me, but it seems like there's a good bit of content here. I'm assuming they'll probably add stuff like Elmo's World later on down the line. This isn't necessarily Sesame Workshop, but I've just noticed that there are like 800 Land Before Time movies. Who's making these? Did anyone know that there were this many? There are 14 Land Before Time movies. Who is making these? The last one came out in 2016? Someone has to be watching these. Is this like a money laundering scheme? Why are they still making these? What is happening? But by far the best collection on HBO Max is Turner Classic Movies. It seems like there's an endless amount of these. The collection consists of tons of big-name classics like Citizen Kane, Casablanca, North by Northwest, and tons more for you to discover. I've also learned more about the Godzilla lore than I ever thought I would know. There's nothing negative here, it's almost like a mini Criterion channel. Another huge chunk of HBO Max is obviously the HBO Originals. Many people, including myself, paid the exact same price as HBO Max just for the originals before Max even came out. HBO Max comes with all of the original HBO shows, movies, stand-up specials, and documentaries. This means that there's plenty of great stuff exclusive to the service now, like Barry, The Righteous Gemstones, Game of Thrones, and tons others. While most of the library is made up by these categories, there's also a good bit of stuff you can find that doesn't fit into one of them. On my first day of going through the service, I already had 117 things put on my watch list. So you'll have no problem finding something to watch if you get HBO Max. And if somehow it doesn't already have enough content for you, there is a ton of stuff coming next month, like Crash, Speed Racer, The Iron Giant, Dr. Sleep, and tons others. Luckily, HBO Max was smart enough not to mess around with the aspect ratios on their classic stuff. Disney Plus. HBO Max also launched with 6 originals, and I watched them so you don't have to. Looney Tunes cartoons. This is probably the one I was most excited for, and it pretty much lives up to what I expected. Each episode has 2 cartoons and a gag in between the 2, with a total of 20 cartoons in Season 1. The gags are generally pretty funny, but feel more like an imitation of the original shorts rather than trying to be creative and put soul into it. The new character designs are generally pretty good, and I like them a lot more than what they went with in Wabbit. The characters also act a lot like how they originally did. It is cool that they have more obscure characters like Ralph Wolf, Sam Sheepdog, Beaky Buzzard, the Mad Scientist, and Gossamer, but I really wouldn't mind if they made original shorts about one-off characters like the classic Looney Tunes used to do. For some reason, a lot of the background human characters that aren't pre-existing look kind of like Ren and Stimpy characters. While they're not as good as the original shorts, they're still pretty okay, and I would definitely recommend it if you're craving for some new Looney Tunes content. Next up, the Not Too Late Show with Elmo. This is a Sesame Street late-night talk show hosted by Elmo that's targeted towards children, and premiered with 3 episodes, and a new one comes out each weekend. Each episode has multiple guest stars, usually at least one being a musician who performs a classic or original Sesame Street song at the end of each episode. The celebrity choices are very strange for a show aimed at basically babies. It has guests like Jimmy Fallon, Casey Musgraves, and John Mulaney, who's definitely not a kid-oriented comedian. Also, how does Elmo's laugh feel more genuine than Jimmy's? As I was sitting here watching Jimmy Fallon floss with Elmo and Casey Musgraves sing a cover of Rubber Ducky, I started thinking, what has my life come to? But yeah, this is pretty high quality for a young children's show, and I'm sure that its target audience will love it. Craftopia. More like Craptopia. Ha 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 ha. Craftopia is hosted by some YouTuber I've never heard of, along with a panel of guest stars that I've also never heard of. It's basically Chopped but with crafts and for little babies. It was so boring that I couldn't finish it, and don't watch it unless you're a preteen girl. Next up we have Legendary. This is a Vogue ballroom dancing competition with several different houses competing for a grand prize of $100,000. Pretty much your basic reality show, like a mix of RuPaul's Drag Race with So You Think You Can Dance. One thing I do like is the way it looks. It's shot in a more interesting way than most reality shows, which gives it a film quality look. The performances are pretty good, but I don't really care about any of the stuff in between, which is what makes up most of the show. It's not my type of show, but it seems pretty good, and I could see people loving it. Love Life. Love Life is a romantic comedy anthology series, with each season following a different woman on her journey to find love. The show premiered with 3 episodes, and the first season is centered around Anna Kendrick's character, Darby. I only watched 1 episode, and there are some problems I could see the series having, but I'm not going to complain them since I didn't finish it. The music in this show is actually really nice, and the characters are also pretty likable. All the performances are pretty good, which leads to the characters being likable. It's not a laugh-out-loud funny kind of show, but it's one of those where you just exhale air from your nose. The tone is a little confusing. It's a mix of this kind of New York life, realistic romantic comedy, but sometimes the characters act like they're in an Arrested Development type show. Everyone around the main character is comically in love, which could work, but it just seems out of place in the tone that the show currently has. There are some better HBO shows, but this isn't bad. This is actually kind of a guilty pleasure for me, and I do think I'm going to finish it, but it's definitely not the best show I've ever seen. I do love that it's an anthology series, so if I decide I don't want to finish watching it whenever Season 2 comes out, I don't have to and can feel completely satisfied. Finally, we have On the Record. On the Record is a documentary following the journey of former A&R executive Drew Dixon, along with several other victims, as they come out with sexual assault allegations against the godfather of hip-hop, Russell Simmons, as well as other abusers. This is definitely the best out of the originals that came out at the launch of HBO Max. Reviewing documentaries is hard because they're mostly graded on presentation, so I'm not really going to be speaking on the story, just more of the technical aspects. The editing is really great and it helps convey the message that the filmmakers are trying to send. There's a fire truck going through my neighborhood. The film is paced very well and it finds the right balance of telling the story of Drew Dixon as well as addressing societal issues on a grander scale that the black community and especially women of color face on a daily basis. The score is also great, with it mostly consisting of hip-hop and R&B, along with several of the songs Drew Dixon helped create. It's like a better version of Hulu's Untouchable because they had very similar subject matters, but On the Record was more informative and stylized. Out of all of these, I would definitely recommend checking this one out the most. But yeah, that's basically HBO Max. This is definitely a more niche service, but it's pretty incredible for what it is. While the price is higher and the library is a little smaller when compared to other services, I believe that this is a premium service, and I personally think it blows Disney Plus and Netflix out of the water. This is most likely going to become my primary streaming service, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you can. A lot of people are able to get it free depending on different factors, so I would definitely look into it and see if you're eligible. But yeah, that's HBO Max, and it's pretty fantastic. And let me know down in the comments what your favorite thing is you've watched on HBO Max so far. Make sure to subscribe for more gaming and movie content every Tuesday, along with random reviews throughout the week, and have a great day.
This is Boomerang from Cartoon Network.